Well, Carla's the triple play. I'm just, single play. So
don't even try that.
I'm telling you.
We are kindred spirits, for those of you who don't know, and we have to thank Mr. Carlton Charles for putting us together, right?
That's right. That's right. And then, poor Carlton came and introduced us and had breakfast with us and didn't say a word. So.
He was like, mission accomplished.
The
Thank you very
mission accomplished,
much.
which is why we gave him his words here without us. So, well, I can't say how delighted we are to have you here
It's
at
my honor.
Hearst Tower, and to share a little bit of what happened once we actually got together and got out of breakfast. About 10 minutes later, we decided that we should collaborate on labs. Carla had always had an interest and desire in creating a multicultural lab, and we had, about 6 months earlier, had set up a women-led lab, and we thought, wow, what would happen if we kind of brought our energy together and we could give women and multicultural teams added extra time and more capital to be founder-friendly. So we are not together. I would say it's fair to say, and we'll ask her to tell us about Morgan Stanley, the lab there. We're not really incubators, not really funds. We are truly labs where we, actually think about what a founder needs, and that's a very different model that has not yet had its full voice in the ecosystem. So that's where we're all heading together, and I want her to tell us a little bit about Morgan Stanley Lab and what have been your successes. In other words, what are you most proud of?
Yes, well, I'll tell you, again, this started, I'd say, in the summer of 14. My chairman came to me and said, I'd really like you to be the head of our multicultural client strategy. And I said, thank you very much, but what does that mean? And he said, well, I want the firm to be seen as the firm that engages most productively with multicultural constituents. I said, thank you very much, what does that mean? And he said, listen, I'll tell you what it's not. It is not philanthropy, because we can write the checks through Morgan Stanley Foundation. It is not diversity and inclusion as you think about it, because we do that through H&R, but I really want to have a place in the ecosystem where we are engaging and moving the needle. And one of the things that we thought of was, how can we have an in-house accelerator? Now, where did that come from? That same summer, I'd been invited to be a judge in this thing called Power Moves, and I know some of you in the room know about Power Moves. And they were doing it in New Orleans, really to sort of position New Orleans as the place for multicultural entrepreneurs, sort of move all the action from the West Coast to the middle of the country. But I will tell you that was a big awakening for me that summer when I was there, because I had never seen so many entrepreneurs of color with tech-enabled businesses that was right there. Because what do you hear in the marketplace? Well, how big is that market? Or is that market really big enough? Or there's not enough entrepreneurs of color, there's not enough women. And that really, when I saw that, all I could do was come back on Monday and said, oh, let me tell you, I was just at the black version of the Shark Tank. That's what I was doing. Because it really opened my eyes, because think about it, my career as a capital markets banker had been in taking companies public, or as an M&A banker in selling them. They were late stage, they weren't early stage. And I thought, oh my gosh, if we could get our hands on that. And I had met William Crowder before, who was already a part of the ecosystem. And I thought, well, we're going to learn from here. And let's figure out what this is all about. And I convinced the founders to say, let's if you're going to do this in New Orleans, why can't you do it in Detroit? And if you're going to do it in Detroit, why can't you think about Oakland? Why can't you think about Miami? So we bankrolled them for Detroit. We bankrolled them for Miami. We were learning at the time. The founders decided that they had a difference of opinion on what this thing ought to be, and they split. But at that point, that was right at the time where my firm was saying, well, what do you want to do? And for those of you who are in the audience who are at big firms, when somebody is giving you a blank sheet of paper, take it. Blank sheet of paper. And, I was constrained by my own thoughts about, well, they don't really want to do this. They're not really serious about this. And for a while, I got to tell you, for 60 days, I kind of said, oh, they're not going to let me do this. They're not going to let me do that. And y'all know what I'm talking about. Everybody has that mentality. But then I said, shame on you if he comes to you in 3 months and said, what have you done? And you say, well, I didn't think y'all would. Oh, y'all wasn't going to really. Oh, you're not serious. A victim of your own constraints in your own mind. And I said, oh boy, let's not have that conversation. Let's go forward. Meanwhile, I meet Carlton Carl, and he said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm thinking about trying to put together an in-house accelerator at Morgan Stanley. He said, you ought to meet Eve Burton. You know, she's the person that does that at Hearst. And I said, we're going to focus on multicultural and women. And he said, well, we're focusing on women, but we don't have no black folks. And I said, well, that's what we got some black folks. He said, you ought to meet Eve, right? And I said, okay. And then magic happened because and again, I'm saying this, I'm telling you this story to underscore the power of the network. He said, you ought to meet Eve. We got together and it was like, girlfriend, right? And she was open enough to say, let me tell you how we did it, which gave me a playbook to go back and build the thing, right? And then I'd met William, and William said, I said, what's missing? And he said, nobody's really focusing on the founders. You know, everybody's giving you some money, but nobody's telling them, how do you go from becoming a founder to a CEO? How do you think about your KPIs? How do you position your stories to get different kind of money? There's different class of investors. Let's think about that. So we built it, right? And now, Eve and I, being the women that we are, type A, yes?
Yeah,
right?
there.
Type A women, we wanted to get together right away with the two organizations, right? So we had the boys get together. And excuse me, gentlemen, but the boys are like, and we're like, all right, girl, let's hold on. When I hit the door today, I said to her, we're ready. It takes a minute to get courage, but we're ready. Because you can amplify your impact in this market if you dare to leverage the relationships and the strengths that others have. And one of the reasons this makes a difference, ladies and gentlemen, is that we're in the time now. There's a lot of capital that's sitting on the sidelines in corporations because despite the fact that the corporations have been doing well, people have not returned to their risk profile pre-financial services crisis. There's a lot of money sitting in private equity now because there weren't any deals in 10, 11, 12, and 13. And now they're faced with having to return that money to the LP or spend it, right? There's money in the VC community, and what we're trying to do with our podcast, because again, we're tired of hearing the story that we don't know how to do it, how big is the market, blah, blah, blah. So we're actually elevating the conversation to show them. So if you haven't already downloaded it, download Access and Opportunity, because we're talking to investors, we're talking to successful entrepreneurs, and we're talking to policy folks, because there's so many cities and states that have the Office of EDC, but they don't know how. So what we're trying to do is to educate the market, and this is how you can make a lot of money in this space. And now, with the latest report that you know that we released last week, we're now saying, hey, VCs, you might be missing something, right? Because your LPs depend on you to find great opportunities, and look at all these opportunities. And we actually listed some deals that the well-known VC names are not in. So we're saying, could you be leaving some money on the table for your LPs? So LPs, where are you? You have a role in this ecosystem to make a difference.
$300 million. Andrea's put the challenge out there.
That's
so
right.
let's roll, right?
That's right.
Let's roll.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so what have been your stumbling blocks? Other than yourself?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest stumbling blocks is that large institutions like to play it safe, right? If it's something that they don't know, they like to go in and actually put their toe in the water. So while they play, the question is, will they play big enough, fast enough to take advantage of this opportunity? So I'd say that's been the biggest stumbling block, is just sort of incrementalization, you know. And was it Eric Schmidt, I think, or one of the founders of Google that said, you know, incrementalization will definitely you're certain death, basically.
Yeah, right.
I'm paraphrasing
Yeah,
his
right.
quote. But at the end of the day, people got it. They believed in it. They funded it. No other firm on the street has done anything like this. So that wasn't the stumbling block. They saw the vision, but the issue was playing small. So now we're kind of saying, we got to play a little bigger. That's right.
Yeah, and actually I think one of Carla's really great contributions in this space, and this is perhaps an ecosystem tendency and a female tendency, which was we never saw it as binary, right? She never saw it as binary. It's not like there's one winner and one loser, right? But that was a little bit, you know, in the world of investment banking, you get the deal or you don't.
That's exactly right.
And so one of the things that I think Carla did that was really magnificent was to sort of open up the the possibility and curiosity and making it all possible by
question.
getting rid of this binary mindset.
That's exactly right. And we talked early on about what we have found in Hearst. But as I said, if you want to play small, if you want to be careful, you don't want to kind of do anything that could expose you. And if I get a partner early on, I'm exposed if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work internally, we can kind of hide that. It didn't really work. Right? But so I think that was part of the reticence early on. But it's not binary. You all know, everybody in this room has gotten to the top. And you all know that there's lots of room at the top. But people try to make you believe that there's not a lot of room at the top, but yet there is. And with respect to the entrepreneurs that are out there, there's lots of opportunity. But I think it's the fear of failure, the fear of the unknown. I have figured out, Eve, that people don't really fear change. Yet that's all you hear is people don't like change, people don't like change. It's not that they fear change, they fear uncertainty. That's the deal. Yeah. And if they don't know it, if they haven't seen it, and again, I will challenge you, those of who work in the industry, there are very few people who have original thought. I'm going to say it again. There are very few people that have original thought. Yeah. And if I haven't seen it, I don't understand it.
Right. Yeah, and also I think one of the things that you really showed was that groups of people thinking truly collaboratively were very transformative, right? I mean, you've transformed an entire generation at Morgan Stanley of multicultural thinkers and non-multicultural people who are multicultural thinkers. Yeah. And to bring all of that group together was truly an extraordinary feat to which I am forever in awe of, and I thank you.
And I'm in awe of what you've done, because there are not very many corporations who would have taken this risk. And what you have done in this organization and the way that you have pulled people into it by having folks who are in other departments actually act as scouts and go out to find. So you've leveraged everybody's power, because everybody has power because you all have relationships. And you've leveraged that to the benefit of this organization. When you were rattling off those numbers, I was like, oh, Lord, let us hurry up and get there, right? Because
you will.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So anything that keeps you up at night when you think of the multicultural founders, for example? I mean, you know, they come out of the door, they're really excited, they're very successful.
Yes.
Does anything keep you up at night?
Yes. I'll tell you, and Raham knows this, having been in our lab, the thing that bothers me is whether or not, or worries me, is whether or not they have the Constitution to kind of push through. Because it's no question that it is hard out there if you're an entrepreneur. And the thing that I have not studied yet, but is probably going to be our next piece of research actually, is whether or not multicultural founders sell too early. It is my perception, and again, it's just a perception because I haven't studied it, but it's my perception that perhaps women and folks of color sell a little bit too early because the journey is so hard. So when somebody comes with a 7 or 8 figure offer, and the decision is, do I take this offer now, or do I actually go for that next round? And I know how hard it was for me to get this round. And I know all the crazy crap I'm gonna have to hear about, well, how can you do this kind of quantitative analysis, and why are you thinking about this, right? And I'm gonna have to hear that again. You know what? I'm gonna take the offer, right? And so I wanna sort of get to a point where that's not a real decision for them, that there's so many sources of identifiable capital that they actually have the courage of, nope, you know what, this is not the right offer. It's probably 40% below what it really should be at this stage. I'm not gonna let the fatigue factor come in. I'm actually gonna hang in there and go get this next round. So that's what worries me. Do they have it?
And I think that's something we can capitalize on, which is how do we help people be able to have the courage to go to that next level and not sell. Because, you know, women, these businesses are being run the way they run their lives, right? You know, for profit, for product, for market, right? They're not for growth and valuation, just for growth and valuation's sake. So it's a very different model, and we're in uncharted territory, so we'll just continue to use the network to make sure we get it right. Yeah, Carla?
And one of the things that's so different about our model is that we really are trying to invest in the growth of
the
founders,
yeah,
which is very different, because most accelerators are in there for, you know, the money. I'm going to give you a couple $100,000. I'm going to get anywhere from a low single digit to a high single digit, maybe even double digit in the case of some well-known accelerators, piece of your company. And oh, by the way, I'm going to expose you to a bunch of different investors. And while there is some content, there is not the sort of, and for lack of a better way to put this, there's not the mama bear aspect.
That's right.
Right?
The founding mother.
Right, and it has taken me sort of 3 years to kind of figure out what's the real differential in terms of what we are offering versus what the market is offering. And for lack of a better way to say it, it's the mama bear aspect. It's the mama bear perspective and demeanor. And, you know, these guys will tell you, we sort of we come in a little bit heavy. Whereas, again, most accelerators may not want to come in that heavy, but we do. We say, and you, certainly, and I will do, we'll say, no, you ought to do that. Now, at the end of the day, it is their company. They don't really have to do what we're telling them to do. The deal is already done. But our job is to try to make our advice so attractive that you would want to do this for your company, even though the fact of the matter is you don't have to do it. And I don't think the ecosystem is sort of taking that approach in terms of really caring about the company or the founder.
I think that's right. It's sort of St. Bernard meets squirrel, right? Anyway,
Girl, I'm going to stick to the bear.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know, I get it. Although bears aren't so friendly, as the St. Bernard is trying to be friendly. I mean, bears are not. They want to eat. All right.
Fair.
All right.
Fair.
So let's change to another topic, because we have you here, and I just can't let this go. I want to talk to you a little bit. Have you tell us a little bit about your philosophy on multicultural leadership. And can you speak to us about your thinking? And I know you've thought a lot about it. Effective leadership. What is it?
Yeah, I think in today's environment, in order to be a very powerful, impactful, influential leader, you have to be intentional. It doesn't just happen. And the reason why I've made this distinction is that if you've grown up in financial services or most industries, leaders were made out of producer cultures. If you were a great trader, if you were a top M&A banker, if you were the lawyer that had the most billable hours, you got paid the most and you were rewarded with a title or position of leadership without any thought as to whether or not you would be the kind of person that would motivate and inspire people to go beyond that which people thought that they could do. So my thesis is that in today's environment, when the millennials and the Zers are quickly becoming the dominant population in the professional workforce, that if you are going to choose to lead, you must be intentional around 8 things. You have to be intentional around your authenticity, and you'd be surprised how many people don't have the courage to be who they really are, but yet it is your distinct competitive advantage. You have to be intentional around building trust because you are competing around innovation, and you have to get people excited about following you even when you don't know where you're going. So it's about building trust. You have to be intentional around creating clarity. Again, when you cannot see, you must create clarity for those who are working with you so that they can outperform that which you have defined. You have to be intentional about creating other leaders. When you get in the leadership seat, your job is not about execution. It's about empowering other people. That's how you amplify your impact in any organization, is to create other leaders. You must be intentional around diversity because it is the key to innovation. Without it, you will have a gap in your go-to-market strategy. You must be intentional around innovation, which means leaders, you must teach your teams how to fail. In most organizations, people are deathly afraid of failing. So you must teach them how to fail. And how do you do that? You celebrate the failures. You must show up every day as an inclusive leader. How do you do that? Solicit other people's voices. And then you must also be intentional about your voice. And that's the key. Most leaders today still do not have the courage to call a thing a thing. And if you're going to be a leader, you have to make sure that you speak your voice and call a thing, as we are doing here. And as I shared with Eve before we came up, I call them my pearls around leadership, my hard-earned and hard-learned pearls. But the strand that keeps all of those pearls together is courage. Because let's talk about it. It takes courage to call a thing. How many times have all of us been in a room when we know that something should have been said or something that was said was wrong and we're looking at our shoes? We don't say anything, we let it go. It takes courage to teach your teams how to fail when in most corporate environments, people are deathly afraid of failing. It takes courage to get close enough to your team to be able to include them and invite them in the conversation and know them by name. It takes courage, obviously, to talk about diversity and bring diversity in the room. It takes courage to take the time to create other leaders and to give your power up when you don't know who you will be once you let it go. It takes courage to create clarity when you can't see, and it takes courage to build the trust, and it certainly takes courage to bring your authentic self to any environment, which is why most people don't do it, right?
Damn, we're so lucky to be here with you.
Well, I'm the lucky one to be here with you.
So, applying all these things, what makes a great board member? You've been on a number of boards, public and private, and you're on one of the iconic boards at Walmart, which is really in the middle of everything in our country and world today. What makes you a great board member, and how do we assist boards to build diversity and gender parity?
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of the great distinctions that I've seen is this willingness to call a thing, right? Because when you first get on a board, the first thing that you're doing is, your tendency, your human tendency is to, assimilate and let me figure out how things go. And I have to tell you, I had the privilege of being among a number of board members before I became a board member. And I used to hear people say things like, I don't want to be seen as the black board member. Or I don't want to be seen as the woman board member. I want to be seen as a board member that happens to be black. And I remember when I heard these comments, I thought to myself, well, what do you think they see when they look at you? I remember thinking that. But I know what they were trying to say. What they were trying to say is, I don't want to be the one that's always carrying the diversity flag. But you know what? At the end of the day, Eve, I do ascribe to that. If you're not going to do it, who's going to do it? And will you look at your shoes and let the issue or the point go by because you don't want to be seen as the black board member? Right? And so I think what makes a good board member is that no matter what the issue is, if it's diversity, if it's inclusion, if it's that I don't like this leader, or I'm not sure this leader is all of that, then I think you have to say that. And even if you are counter to what everybody else is saying, so if the flow is going this way and you, in your gut, in your heart, you think it's that, I think you have to say it. I think that's why you have been invited to the table. And even if it's not popular. Now, as your mother said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So I do think in order for your listeners to embrace it, you got to think about how you introduce the point in, but I think you can't let it go. And I think that's what makes a good board member. Every board member has an expertise. And I heard Andrea use the point about what's my superpower. And I've been using that word a lot recently because I think all of us need to challenge ourselves and say, what's my real superpower? We're all good at a lot of things. That's how we got to be in this room. We're all good at a lot of things. But what's that one thing that's your true superpower? And when you're in a boardroom, you got to think about, how do I, put that forth and not let the moment go?
It's fantastic. And have you ever been in an environment where it's virtually impossible to be your authentic self?
No, because I think it's possible to be your authentic self all the time. The question is, what part of you are you going to expose? So people say to me all the time, well, Carla, I can't bring my authentic self because they can't take the real me, right? But I think the key is to understand that all of us are multifaceted. There's an intellectual you, there's a funny you, there's a frivolous you. So once you understand that we're all multifaceted, then the key to bringing your authentic self in any room is to bring all of you in the room, and at that moment, relax. And you can meet people where they are. You can figure out where they are. They're going to give you their energy. And then you can decide, is it the intellectual me that connects? Is it the frivolous me that connects? Is it the Southern Jacksonville girl with me that connects? What part of me is going to connect right now in this moment authentically? Because all of that's me, right? The joke that I like to tell is, as my friend Michelle knows, when we were working together, every now and then I'd get the opportunity to go down in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, Birmingham. Now y'all know, and I know, that the boys in Birmingham cannot take full frontal Carla. They can't take full frontal. So they get Carla Light, right? But Carla Light is just as much a part of me as full frontal, right? Now, Carla Light doesn't show up in New York City because she get crushed, right? Nor do I assume that because I'm walking in a Birmingham boardroom that it's full of Birminghamans. It could be a Birmingham boardroom full of New Yorkers. But I will relax and walk in the room and meet people where they are. That's the key to bringing your authentic self. So I don't think there's any scenario where you don't bring your authentic self. You figure out when you walk in that room what part of you connects.
All right, now we got to do some fun facts because
All
we got to probe you a little bit here,
Okay.
right? Okay. Who inspires you most in business today?
Well, I tell you, you certainly have been an inspiration, as I said in front here in public. No question about it in terms of what you've done and how you did it.
Thank you.
Right, and I continue to take some notes and some tips from you. But I'd say that my biggest inspiration actually has been my mother, you know, who's no longer with us, because she was the master multitasker. And she really made me believe that as a woman, you could have it all. And you could do it all, because she was a professional, she was a mother, she was a wife, she was an avid bingo player every night. My mom was playing bingo, right? So I really did not grow up with a model that I couldn't do what I want to do.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what do you like to do with your daughter?
Oh, my goodness. I love just to talk to Dakota now. So many of you know that I have a 4-year-old. Yes, no comments, please. I have a 4-year-old. I have a 4-year-old, and, you know, as my friends know, I've been getting my head handed to me. But one of the things that I love talking to, doing now is just talking to her, because she's picked up so many different things that it's kind of funny. And she really does, at 4 years old, think she knows it all. She'll say, well, Mommy, that's not how you do it. And I say, ooh, girl, do tell, right? And she's going to explain something to me, but it's just funny to watch. And, you know, I say this to parents that are in the room, especially parents to girls, because I get the question all the time from fathers when I'm on the road speaking. They'll say, how do I get a daughter, you know, that does what you do? And I said, affirm your girls. That's right. Affirm your girls, right? It's because, you know, whether you like it or not, parents, for your kids that are young, you are God, right? And, you know, for those of you who know my spirituality, I'm not trying to say, you know, I know who runs the show, but until they get their own relationship with a higher power, you are God. They are looking at your every word, your every move. They're believing everything that you say. And so when you affirm them, that gives them confidence like you wouldn't believe. And I remember when Dakota was 7 months old, I was into this, you know, I was really into this affirming thing. And she was just trying to crawl, Eve. And I remember she was holding on, you know how they scoot, right? They pull and they scoot. And I said, come on, girl, you can do it. I believe in you. You can do it. And she looked up. And she smiled, and she really started going for it then. I said, oh, okay.
1,000 moments, 1,000 of those moments.
So from then on, I have affirmed. So affirm your kids. You're the confidence that they need to deal with this thing called social media. You know, most of you, and like me and Eve, we didn't have to deal with social media. We didn't have an outside person that was questioning us all the time. So when our parents say, you can do anything you want to do, you know, and my mother would say, winners never quit, quitters never win, right? So we believed all those things, but now they got outside forces that we didn't have. So your voice has to be louder.
Well, I want you to know that Dakota last night was able to get Carla into a superhero outfit, and for all of those who want to see the picture, I highly recommend it. But it was absolutely clear that Dakota was in charge last night.
Yes,
so she was the inspired.
She made me put on a Captain Marvel suit, with all of my assets, right? So that was fun.
Okay, what's been your favorite book you've read recently?
I reread Transform Your Life by Dr. Reverend Barbara King, which was a book that changed the way I prayed.
Fantastic. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, which decade do you think humanity made the most progress?
70s.
Why?
Because it was at the time of the women's movement, and it was right on the back of the civil rights movement. So in my opinion, as I look at history, I think people of color and women made the most progress in that decade.
So we're back to the 60s now?
No, I didn't say we're back to the 60s. I think we have made incremental progress in each of the other decades, but I think it was exponential in the 70s.
I'm thinking about the 2000s now.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going backwards. Or no?
We regressed a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
I will agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
As a kid, what did you want to be? And is that who you are now?
Oh, Eve, I didn't believe you were going to ask me that question. As a kid, I wanted to be president.
Oh, it's still time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Carla for president. Woo!
No.
Woo! Okay. Okay.
No. My path was I was going to be a lawyer and I was going to be president. That was my path.
Oh, man,
But
well, forget
there's
the
there's no
300
amount of money today.
Well,
No.
I don't know. That $300 million, I think, maybe going into a PAC.
No. And I'll tell you why I wouldn't consider it. It's too dirty. And here's the deal. I believe that I have lived my life in a way that if you decided to rummage through my closet, I could withstand any skeletons that you would find. But the problem is, everybody has a cousin Junebug. And everybody, I don't care what race you are. And my feeling is this, if cousin Junebug decided that he wanted to smoke a joint on the corner, that's Junebug's business. But because he's my cousin and I chose to run, poor Junebug shows up on the front page of the New York Times, and that is not fair. So if politics, that's a thought. So if politics would confine themselves to the candidate, then it might be something to consider. But because people that you love, that are in your circle, that have nothing to do with your decision, get pulled in because somebody wants to hurt you or discredit you, that's not fair. The only thing that's off limits in today's politics are the kids. And let's face it, that's marginal, because they came after the Bush girls and they came after the Obama girls. And I just don't think that's right.
Oh, that's very depressing. I was so excited. All right, do you have a favorite family tradition?
Yes. At the holidays, I like to make my grandmother's oyster dressing and her rice perlo. And I only do it at the holidays. Yep.
I think we can maybe put that into a business.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's good.
All right, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Yes. Best piece of advice is frequently wrong, but never in doubt. Okay, and I got that when I was a third-year associate. It was another woman, and we were on a plane together. I was in M&A at the time, and she said to me, you know, Carla, your problem is you're too quick to tell people when you don't know something. And I actually thought for me to say I don't know was a badge of courage, because I felt pretty confident that I knew a lot of stuff, right? So to say I don't know, no big deal. And she said, no. People pay us lots of money, millions of dollars for our judgment, you know, and our counsel. You can't say you don't know. You know, just do, sorry, gentlemen. She said, just do like the boys do. Frequently wrong, but never in doubt, right? And I started thinking about what she said, and I thought about all the meetings I had been in when senior guys had said something that was just wrong, and I'd be sitting there having done the analysis, you know, but I wouldn't say anything because they're the senior person and I'm the first, second-year associate. But they would always, and I realized what she meant. They were wrong, but they would say it with confidence. So again, that didn't sit right with me, saying something that was just wrong. That just didn't sit right with me. But what I learned was I could posit an answer. Instead of saying, I don't know, I could posit an answer and leave myself some room to figure it out. So when somebody asked me something that I didn't know, I would say, Eve, I think it's X. But you know what? Let me go back and check this thing. But I'm pretty sure it's X. And then when I went back to check, if it wasn't X, I'd come back and say, you know what, Eve, I told you it was X, but it really was Y, right? And what I figured out is people didn't care what you had said before. As long as you ultimately gave them the right answer, that was okay. But I said X with confidence. It's X, but let me check it, right? Right? And it was the best piece of advice.
All right, I want to open it up to some questions because we still have Carla for a few minutes. Alex, is there someone there's got a mic?
Fred.
There we go.
Carla, first of all,
Hold on.
having known
Wait.
you for-
The rest can't hear down the way.
Okay. Hi, Carla. This is Frederick Royal. I work at J.P. Morgan, and I've had the benefit of knowing Carla for a number of years.
Thank you.
You've impacted so many people, a lot of those in this room. I think we are now at a time that, as I think about my career, things are changing in a meaningful way. So the advice that you gave me quite some time ago that's helped me to develop in my career, I'll be eternally grateful. But as you think about the next generation that's developing now, what's the advice that you give the young professionals to help them aspire to be you?
Yes, I tell them to focus on their relationships early. We were taught, put your head down, work really hard, and, you know, make sure that there's no debate about that and put some points on the board early. But I tell people, don't do that to the exclusion of building the relationships right out of the box. You can't afford to wait, because in the first, you know, couple of years, people are making decisions, and it's not going to be around the points. It's going to be about, you know, do I know you well enough? Because remember, all the decisions are made behind closed doors when you are not in the room, right? So somebody has to speak about you when you're not in the room. And if they don't know you, they won't speak on you. And this is what I say to people. Your performance currency gets your name on the short list that's being discussed behind closed doors. But when your name is called, if nobody in that room can say, oh, Fred, he's a safe pair of hands. Oh, good guy. Great relationship guy. Notice there's no numbers associated with that. He's a 5, he's a 4. They go, great guy. I like him, right? If nobody says that, they just go to the next name on the list. And it has absolutely nothing to do with your ability to do the job, but everything to do with whether or not somebody's willing to spend some currency on you behind closed doors. So this conversation that I have about sponsorship or relationship, I have it very much earlier with them. I'm like, yes, get the work done, show them that you can do a DCF, make sure they understand your new valuation, speak the language, but have some relationships. If I talk to you within 12 months and you can't tell me who's carrying your paper into the room, you have not invested your time well. That's what I say.
Question?
Hi, my name's Nicole Jones, and I run corporate venture for Delta Airlines in Atlanta. I think I've learned more in the last few minutes than I have all year, so thank you. My question was about, you mentioned celebrating failure earlier. What would you say is a great failure that you've had in your career, and what lessons you learned from it?
Yeah, I've had lots of them, and it depends on how you want to look at failures, right? The most recent, I would argue, that you can call a failure, but I frankly didn't think of it as a failure. I was trying to, some of you in the room know this, I was trying to actually help the firm raise a fund that would invest in women and asset management of color. But unfortunately, my timing could not have been worse. I started the effort in the beginning of the third quarter of '08. So I don't need to tell you what happened in September, right? And that made it very difficult. And by the time I called the thing and said, we're not going to get this thing done, Volcker had changed the rules of the game because the firm had written a $50 million check to this thing, and no other firm on the street had written a check of that size. But we couldn't capitalize on it until we actually closed it, right? And we couldn't get to the critical mass of being able to do that. And so we ended up saying, okay, we're going to suspend the fund. So Dodd-Frank had changed, Volcker had changed, the whole landscape had changed. But here's why I don't really characterize that as a failure. I tell people that when you're going to take a risk, you ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, will the new thing give you skills and experiences that you wouldn't get if you stayed in your current seat another 12 months? Number 2, will the new thing expose you to people, relationships, and networks that you wouldn't get if you stayed in your current seat another 12 months? Third thing, will the new thing create new branches on your personal decision tree of opportunity? I.e., you can go off and do some other things you wouldn't have been able to do if you stayed in your current seat another 12 months. If the answer to all 3 of those questions is yes, you take the risk. So nobody was asking me to leave my capital market seat, but I kept hearing myself say that if you're going to be a leader, you got to take risk, and I wasn't taking any risk, right? So I said, I want to go do this thing. Well, I didn't know, number 1, that the financial services crisis was about to happen. Number 2, I didn't know that whenever you are a first-time fund with a first-time team, you have hurricane forces winds in your face, right? And number 3, I didn't know the market was going to shift so markedly around the appetite around some of these asset managers. But to this day, I do not regret it. Why? Over the same period of time, what happened in capital markets? So let's ask the first question. Will I get skills and experiences that I wouldn't have gotten if I stayed in my current seat? No deals happened in 2010. No deals happened really in 2011. Nothing was going on in 2012. So the same 2.5, 3-year investment, I wouldn't have added anything to my intellectual, my experiential tool chest. Number 2, did I meet people or build relationships that I wouldn't have gotten in my old seat? Well, I ended up with relationships with people who would take my call. Not I met you at a conference, I got a business card, right? But real relationships with hundreds of billions of dollars of capital that my firm didn't have, by the way, that they are leveraging now that I was able to bring to the table because we had built a relationship. And number three, can I go off and do some other things that I wouldn't have been able to do? Absolutely. And it was interesting, taking the risk created the opportunity to be a vice chairman. So.
Mine is gonna be a little different. Oh, hell. I want to hear about this singing. They know who I am. My name is Chris Spencer. I'm friends with Andrea. I keep hearing about this singing, and you sing in church, and you sing at Carnegie and Radio City, and I just want to know more about it.
Yes, so I've been singing since I was 9. I am doing, if you really want to hear the singing, on Tuesday, December 17th, I'm doing another concert at the Apollo.
Yeah.
And I know. And you know what? I'll tell you, Chris. Eve asked me if I would sing at the end. And I told her, I said I would rather not because it's been a beep of a day. And I've been talking all day. And I unfortunately have to fly out at 6 o'clock in the morning to do a funeral. And to my favorite aunt. And I said, you know, if I got anything, Eve, I want to give it to my aunt, right, tomorrow. So that's why I told her I wouldn't sing. But since you've outed a sister, I'll give you just a little bit. Amazing grace, how sweet is the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see.
Ladies and gentlemen, Carla Harris.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Eve Burton. Thank you, honey.